everybody, it's markcrilley. I'm back with another how to draw video. Sorry I did not get one done last week. I'm under deadline, and sadly it's going to keep me busy for at least another few months. But I will do my best to get new videos for you as frequently as possible. Today we're going to be looking at contrast and how illustrators use heightened contrast to create the illusion of depth. I took this drawing, scanned it into the computer, and did a cut and paste so that we have the exact same drawing side by side. And on this one on the left, I'm going to be using the technique of pushing the background away by way of making it super dark. And then over here we're going to have the foreground be dark, and we'll be able to compare the effect that's achieved by the two different techniques. And you see me taking this really quite dark blue. It's the darkest of the markers that I'm going to be using today. To color in this very farthest away section. And I'm going to set this marker aside. I'm going to do this next part real time, but pretty soon we are going to kick it into Timelapse. Bring in old man Timelapse. You ought to bring me in more often, if you ask me. Yeah, well, old man Timelapse, no one did ask you. Well, that's your whole problem. You ought to ask me more often. So you see me switching from the darker blue to the lighter blue as I go from one stage to the next. And I may have got them out of order here, my apologies. I'm going to have to sort of darken this one in on the fly. That's going to be one of the challenges for me on this video, keeping these markers in order. And as I move from one shade to the next, we hopefully will begin to sort of make the midground feel a little closer to us compared to this distant background, which I've made really, really dark. And that is about it. I am going to go ahead and kick it into Timelapse and finish off all of the coloring for this illustration on the left, and then I'll come back and have a few words before I move on to coloring the alternate version. Alright, so there you go, and you see that I sort of cheated things a little bit by using darkness in the foreground to cause at least the lower part of the character to pop against the lighter road that he's walking on. And that in itself, I think, is really another example of how contrast creates depth. We're getting the dark falling back and the white popping forward here, and then just like an inch below, you're getting the dark popping forward against the white. So yeah, it certainly works both ways. And what I wanted to do now, before moving on to the other illustration, is to just take a Sharpie, which is complete black, of course, and go in here and just create an even darker, distant realm, sort of layer, just to show that when you go complete black in this situation, then you really do make it go as far back as you can. But what I'm going to do now is take out this, what was the sort of darkest color until we used the Sharpie. And don't get too shocked here, folks, but we're just going to go right in and start coloring in this whole closest layer. And of course that means I'm obliterating a lot of the line work. And, normally if I knew in advance my plan to color the foreground this dark, I wouldn't bother inking so many details. So that's just something that relates to advanced planning, I suppose, if you're coloring. But I think you can already see how darkening in just this little corner here is causing it to really pop forward. And of course I'm going to be doing the same thing over here, and also with the ground and with the entire foreground figure. But I am going to do it in Timelapse. So let's go ahead and bring in old man Timelapse at last. and he is going to help me color all this in, and then we'll be back to say a few final words comparing the effects of the two different approaches. All right, so there you see the two different ways of doing it, and I thought just for fun I would bring out the Sharpie, Old Man Sharpie. I'm not going to do a voice. I'm not going to do a voice. And do the sort of equivalent over here of just adding even further black, just here and there, to show you that, you know, the absolute jet black pops forward in a pretty powerful way. And I have always found that that the two approaches are not completely equal in terms of the effect achieved. I feel like the dark in the foreground has a more three-dimensional look to me than the light in the foreground. It's not really a fair fight. I suppose I should have darkened all this stuff in even more to make it a comparable situation, but in my comics and so forth, I'm constantly using this effect of darkening the foreground to bring it closer to the viewer, whereas you know, darkening some point to push it farther away, I'm just I don't find myself doing that so often. Anyway, let me know what you think. Some of you may have different opinions on that last bit, but give me just a moment. I'm going to go grab my books, so that I can say thank you to anyone who has supported me by getting them Mastering Manga, my book on how to draw manga, as well as all kinds of other things in that book. The Realism Challenge, my book on hyper-realistic illustrations, and my very latest book, The Two-Pencil Method. I really cannot say thank you often enough to those of you who choose to support me by getting those books, but I think it's time for me to lay down all of these markers. I'm just going to lay them all down. So that I can say thank you one last time. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back with another one real soon.